Well, hello, welcome to 2026. How the heck are you? Thanks for being here. I'm Jen Sylvester here. This is the Savvy Home Seller Housing Market Show. And it's been good to be back. It's been a couple weeks. Been kind of busy, with the whole holiday thing. Hope you guys are doing well. Had a nice holiday season. I've been a little busy building this. Yeah, I am super excited. Months and months of planning and all the things, and I finally have a dedicated studio space. I am super excited to be able to just sit down and go and not have to do double duty with my desk and the whole 9 yards. But I'm here, not here to talk to you about that. I'm here to talk to you about what's going on, housing market, recap, and what are we in for 2026? I'm reading through the housing market news and I'm looking at all the predictions and it's all over the place. It's no wonder there's frustration. There's no wonder that there is confusion in all the things. Because there's mixed messages all over the place, and nobody knows what to believe. Is it going to crash? Is it going to, appreciate by 10% or what the heck? So we're going to dig into that data today. We're going to dig into, what's happening and what, as a home seller, if you're thinking about selling your house, sometime in 2026, what can you do? Or even if you're in the process of doing that now, how can you prepare yourself? Because I'm hearing this as, folks are, getting back to me with, updates on when I connect them to one of my, awesome referral agents, how are things going? And there's definitely a growing number of, growing amount of concern and frustration and worry, lots of worry about what's happening because it's all over the place. The information is all over the place. And oh my gosh, the house has been on the market for, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. It's never going to sell. And I'm here to tell you that that's not necessarily the case. So, we're going to dig into some stuff and, feel free to jump in the chat. I'll make sure that the chat is working. Here we go. Thank you, Tracy. I know I've got a new setup and I'll be lying to you if I have a little bit of anxiety about, because I'm so type A, I want everything to work perfectly. I don't know. It's unrealistic. I know, but, I want to make sure everything is, queued up. But in any event, let's look at what we're going to be talking about, today. So, per usual, post your wins. There's a lot of turbulence in 2025 and a lot of, uncertainty and ups and downs and bumpy roads, but there are also a lot of wins. So, you know what, guys, share it with us. If you had some wins as you closed out 2025 December, you finally closed in a house, finally got accepted an offer, finally got your place on the market, or got your offer accepted as a buyer, doesn't matter. Pop it in the chat. Pop it in the chat if you're watching this after the live show. Pop it in the comments. We want to know. We want to support you. If you have questions during the chat or during after the fact, put QQQ, in front of your question. Helps me just pick it out, gets my attention more quickly so I can make sure I can get to you. I dropped a poll. I want to know what you think about as we're looking back, we have to look back before we look forwards. How did 2025 shape up in your eyes? I'm curious to know. Did it turn out better? Did it turn out worse? Was it about the same? What your expectations were. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in the poll tonight is kind of gauging your expectations. What were your expectations for 2025? Were you expecting a crash and then it didn't happen? Possibly. I think a lot of people are woke up New Year's Day and was like, oh, the crash bros were wrong for now. Today's headlines, we're talking about, I'm going to look at the housing market 2025 recap. That's going to give us clues as to what is going to happen next year or this year, as the case may be. And then I want to look at predictions versus reality. This I kind of dug into a little deeper, because everybody and their mother's brother's uncle are doing predictions right now. Everybody's got a voice, everybody's got an opinion, and they're all telling you this is going to happen and that's going to happen. Home prices are going to rise, home prices are going to drop, inventory, mortgage rates, all the things. I'm going to turn back the clock a little bit and see what the predictions were at the beginning of 2025 and then actually how they panned out and who was way off the mark and who was close. I think that that's crucial because how can you take someone's word for a prediction now if they were totally off last year? The street cred is not there. I'm sure you guys would agree. So I'm excited to chat with you guys. We got Tracy in the house. Good evening. Good to see you. We got Samuel. After 9 months, I finally got my house under contract. I had to drop the price $80,000. Well, we're going to give you definitely a cheer for getting your house under contract. Not great news that you had to drop it $80,000, but it likely was not anything to do with maybe what you were doing, what you weren't doing, all the things. It just the market reaction and the fact that you got it under contract says that you made the proper adjustments to get from point A to point B. So kudos, Samuel, for doing that. You're making progress, which is a great thing. So as we're going along here, drop your questions in the chat, all the things. Let's get this party started because, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about tonight. So let me switch here. We'll get over to this article that came up. Narada Real Estate Investments. They do some interesting articles. This dropped earlier today, and they kind of went over what some predictions are. And I'm going to do this actually first. Then we're going to get into the reality check to see so do we really put some street cred to these predictions? So housing market predictions for 2026 by America's leading economists. So I'm going to jump right through it. As always, I'm going to post these articles in the description so you guys can read through them, digest them at your own, pace, and whatnot. But, this is housing market predictions for 2026, what America's leading economists are saying. A renewed energy for home sales in 2026. So we've got first up to bat is Lawrence Yun. Lawrence Yun, NAR chief economist. Lawrence has been kicking around for a long time. And he does, and you know what? His track record actually, in my book, from what I see, and I've been following his predictions for a couple decades. And he's not far off. So he's got some good street cred in my mind. But anyways, he says he believes we'll see a noticeable bump in home sales, estimating an increase of about 14% nationwide. That's a good-sized bump. His reasoning is solid. More homes are coming on the market, and the lock-in effect, which is when people that with low mortgages don't want to move, they're hesitant to sell. It's starting to fade, and that happens. It happens anytime the interest rates go down really low, and folks lock into a rate. And he actually explains right here, so when life events happen, like needing more space for a growing family or moving closer to jobs, people are more likely to list their homes. Plus, he anticipates lower mortgage rates, which will open the door for more buyers to qualify for a loan. I have always said, and I will continue to say, that when you buy or sell a home, it should not, and is rarely, when it's your own personal residence, it is really based on what's going on in the market. Now, the market will affect your personal finances, but you're not making that decision based on the market. You're basing it on your personal finances. Be it as it may, if the interest rates are such that you cannot afford to do that based on your current income and your debt and all the things, you're making it based still on your own personal finances, not what's happening in the market. And what he's saying, and I agree with him, is that when life events happen, when you outgrow a space, when you have a spouse that passes, or you have a house that's a big house, too much for you to take care of, or you want to be near your kids or your grandkids, or you have a job relocation, you're having too many kids and you need more space, or maybe not having kids and just want more space. That kind of stuff, you say, you know what, we can afford it. it makes sense. We're going to, and you do it. And you say, you know what, even though we're stepping away from that higher rate, that lower rate rather, it's still within our budget. It's still within our means. We have the down payment, all the things. So the longer that time period, the bigger that gap between when that low interest, that unusually that falsely low rate the rates that we had during COVID, during the pandemic, the more we distance the time distance from that time period, you're going to see this happen more and more. He says that home prices, gentle gains. It says don't expect a wild spike like we saw a few years ago. He predicts home price growth to be quite modest, around 2 to 3%, very similar to what he predicted last year. Less crowded open houses, inventory up roughly 20%. We can already see that happening. More houses coming on the market. He says less pressure to make snap decisions for a smaller chance at being caught in bidding wars. And I'm seeing this, in my day-to-day, with home sellers, with navigating that road of, a buyer comes to take a look at a house and, they don't get an offer right away. And there's sometimes a lag period of days, maybe a week before the buyer makes an offer because they want to do their due diligence. And that's what's happening more because the buyers don't have that pressure to make that snap decision because another buyer's nipping at their heels. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. You can have a lot less buyer, remorse, but it also means you have to adjust your expectations as a home seller in terms of, how quickly that turnaround time is. He also goes on to say the American dream is still alive. Desire to own a home hasn't gone anywhere. Says for many renters, the only thing standing in the way is the high cost of mortgages. I have read a lot this year about the American dream dying. And you know what? My opinion on that is save the drama for your mama. I don't think that ever will die. I think that yes, there's always going to be a contingent of folks that believe that renting is best for them. And that's not a bad thing. I had a viewer reach out to me, earlier today, sent me a message and was asking about discount brokerages and, and whatnot, and what, what my thoughts were on that and, whether they're good, whether they're bad, and discount brokerages where there's a flat fee service or they're, these brokerages that are charging less than say your full service, brokers are. There's a butt for every seat. That's what I say. There's a butt for every seat, and it's not a one size fits all. There's going to be, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's not a bad thing. You just need to adjust your expectations. And I think that owning a home isn't for everybody. Sometimes, and that's not based on whether you can afford it or not. Some people can afford it and just choose not to, and that's fine. But the dream of owning, the dream of not being evicted, of being able to make alterations to your home and not have anybody, looking over your shoulder, being able to pay your mortgage payment, knowing that next year or when your lease is up and your landlord says, hey, listen, I think I'm going to sell this year. That's not going to happen as long as you make your mortgage payment. I think that quote unquote, that American dream is still alive and well, so that sums up Lawrence. Now, Robert Dietz, apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, the chief economist for the National Association of Home Builders, is also seeing some positive movement in new home construction. A big factor here is the Federal Reserve's actions. And it says, while they don't directly set mortgage rates, their decision to do so influence the interest rates builders pay for construction loans. Lower rates for builders mean they can afford to build more, which ultimately helps increase the housing supply. He anticipates about a 1% increase in single-family building and new home sales for 2026. There is right now with, I think, Powell's duration of the chair of the Federal Reserve is his days are numbered. His days are numbered, and there is a big push by the current administration to replace him, and there's a big push by the president to lower interest rates. If he gets his way, if the administration wins out and a new chairman takes Powell's place, and we start seeing much lower interest rates, this very well could happen. And it will have other side effects, which I don't necessarily think are going to be great in terms of, affecting overall affordability, but it will help. It will help in this particular case, in the case of a first-time home buyer. He says that an unusual price dynamic he points out that the median price of a resale home is currently higher than the median price of a newly built home. Now, I'm going to put an asterisk on this, and I'm going to say this is absolutely location specific. That's super important to know. Do your research if you're out there home shopping, because I'm up in the Northeast, I'm up in Massachusetts. That is not the case here. However, you head down towards the southern states that were building at an unprecedented rate during the pandemic, where their demand is higher. You're talking Texas, you're talking Florida, you're talking, that southern region, because of the fact that builders are offering all these incentives. It is that you can actually buy a new home, a newly built home, for less than you can a pre-existing home. And that is extremely rare. That's like buying a new car for less than a used car. You don't see that ever. This is happening right now. It says builders are offering incentives like price cuts, and the locations of new construction are contributing to this interesting market quirk. The persistence of housing deficit, he talks about, the housing shortage is a major reason why affordability remains a challenge. We need more homes. That's the bottom line. Mortgages are not going to fix the affordability crisis. We need more units. We need more properties for people to purchase and live in, period. The number of, the population in this country has exceeded the number of homes that are available, period. And it just is. It just is. We need more, and that will absolutely help. Zoning laws are a hurdle, and this is something where the administration has promised that they will get involved in terms of, easing, helping, I don't know how they would do this because zoning laws are local and the federal government can't get involved with local zoning laws, but they are, that's what they're trying to encourage and push as part of their overall goal to help with the affordability crisis, is to try to ease the restrictions enough so that these builders can build more without being, without having their hands tied. So he's predicting that there's going to be more of those types of policies. And then finally, shifting geography, watch the Midwest. This was interesting. He says, while some previously booming markets, Texas and Florida, there you go, have cooled off a bit, he notes that emerging markets of strength, especially in the Midwest, affordable cities near major universities, Columbus, Ohio, Indianapolis, and Kansas City, are showing strong growth. This suggests a geographic shift in where the housing action will be. I will be watching this very closely. This is it's interesting to see how that shift, because the focus has been down in the southern states, down Texas and Florida area has been, all we've been talking about the last year and a half, last at least year, to have that shift, what will happen? Will we start seeing more new construction there? Will there be, because of the affordability? Now, I will tell you from experience, I live about an hour south of Boston. And where I live in Plymouth, Plymouth was always considered super affordable because of the fact that we're an hour south of Boston. It was like the best kept secret. If you can't afford to live in around the suburbs of Boston, you come down to Plymouth. The real estate, housing was less expensive, cost of living less expensive, easy access highways and, commuter train to get to Boston, all the things. There was a huge interest in boom. A lot of people came down. Well, what do you think happened when that came to a crescendo? When so many people came down, the demand and was so high, it pushed up prices. Now our prices are not quite in line with Boston, but it is not, the gap is not there. The gap is not there. That's what could happen. That very likely will happen to these affordable cities if this happens. If there's a big surge with these cities, you'll see those prices go up, and that affordability, that affordability picture is going to change. And then, finally, they talked about, affordable. Actually, two more sections here, and I'm going to get over to the comments in a hot second, guys. Affordability. Now, of course, affordability is going to take center stage. Of course, that is probably the number one thing on every consumer, not just home buyer, home seller, every consumer, in the country is talking about affordability right at this very moment. And Danielle Hale, chief economist at Realtor.com, chimed in and is incredibly optimistic about improving affordability in 2026. She believes that this will be a major driver for home sales to finally break through the stagnant 4 million mark we've seen lately. The reason being monthly payments easing. Hale's team, this is interesting. Let's see what will shake out. Hale's team estimates that 2026 will be the first time we see monthly mortgage payments decrease since 2020. Even with the modest 2% home price growth, lower mortgage rates will more than offset the increase. Combined with rising incomes, this means that in real terms, homes will become more affordable. It's not necessarily the sticker price dropping, but the cost relative to your home improving. Here's the thing, and this is the difference between the what it costs you to get into a house and the pace at which income is growing has been something I've been talking about for a while. It has outpaced income. The gap is too big. We need to slow the growth on the housing side, let the income catch up. It's going to take a long time. It is not happening in 2026. Sorry to burst your bubble, is not. But it is starting to inch because incomes, cost of wage increases, that does happen. I know a lot of areas, and I get sometimes folks reach out and they say, it's not true, incomes are dropping. Not if you look at the income data, the national data, and I'm not talking about the data reports coming out of the White House or for any president. Every president's going to try to alter the numbers to make themselves look better. Every single president in history does that. I don't think you can tell me otherwise. It's a political ploy, in my opinion. I mean, a little bit jaded when it comes to politics, but just because the numbers aren't necessarily real, but there are cost of living. Increases. I talked to my 19-year-old and she tells me what she's getting for her minimum wage versus it's like $17 an hour. And I'm like, gee whiz. But back when I was her age, it was like $4 an hour. This is what happens. This is what happens. The issue is not the fact that it's not the fact. The issue is not the fact that the housing prices are rising. It's the issue is that there's the gap is not there. We got to close the gap. And she thinks it's going to happen. A more balanced market. Seeing a slight increase in sellers taking their homes off the market. She's saying it's not cause for panic. I agree. It says the market is the most balanced it's been in nearly a decade. We're getting there. Some markets better than others, giving buyers a bit of breathing room, requiring sellers to be more flexible. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I think that's going to be huge heading into 2026. Huge. Regional differences persist, and we're going to continue seeing that in 2026 for sure. Whereas, the Northeast versus the Southern regions versus the Midwest versus the West Coast, that's not going away. Honestly, those differentials will remain. And policy stability is key. Expects the pace of policy changes to slow down in 2026, which makes sense. It says the stability will be a relief for everyone, including buyers, sellers, builders, allowing them to plan more effectively without constantly reacting to new rules. There was a lot happening with policy last year. Too much, way too much. It's like, coming in with, like a freight train with all these policies and all the things, and then turning them and changing them and tariffs going on and then tariffs taking off and then putting them back on. It's just, as a business owner, how do you prepare when you're talking about pricing and so forth, and when you're trying to build a house, and how do you plan when you're a buyer? How do you plan when you're a seller? We need things to just simmer down. Was that Saturday Night Live skit? I think was a character. Simmer down now. Just simmer down now. That's what we need. And it does go into some demographic stuff, which was interesting. Jessica Lott's the NAR's deputy chief economist. First-time home buyers gradually returning. Boomers still leading the pack, and all cash buyers are not disappearing. I don't think that I agree with that. I mean, the money is there. The money's not disappearing. So in a nutshell, let's get over the chat, see what's popping here. Interesting. So we got Norton in the house. Hello. Good to see you. Karen in the house. Norton says, listing our home with a new agent after interviewing 3 as recommended. Very good. Dropped asking $200,000 from the price recommended by Compass in July. Wow. I'd be interested to see if that $200,000 is based on the fact that the market has changed, or based on the fact that the pricing that was recommended to you by the prior listing agent was off base. I wonder which one it is. Either way, I hope I find a buyer very quickly. We've got my friend Clark down in Atlanta. Happy New Year, sir. Good to see you. Michelle says, I have a great 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. It has been on the market since October 4th. It is really getting to me that no one has made an offer. It has new HVAC, water tank, electric sockets, switches, and new roof. You're not alone. I remember, not that this helps your situation, but I've been doing this a long time, and it's 1996. So I weathered the storm when the market crashed, great financial crisis. And when that market tanked, and, life still continued. Not everybody was over leveraged. Not everyone was buying with zero money down. You had everyday home sellers, everyday home buyers, and life went on. Babies were born, life, job transfers. And there's a catastrophic financial collapse in our economy. A lot of people had to take new jobs. And sometimes it means moving to a different state, different area. And you had to sell your house in order to be able to buy a new one, to relocate. Patience was the key. It went from the house is selling in a hot second to waiting. My number one recommendation, Michelle, is lean into data and research. Whenever I get anxious about anything, I research. Knowledge is power. Actually. Remember that little ditty? The more you know, from back in the 80s? It's true. The more you know, the more information you know. In other words, you need to find out, get in tune with median home price in your area, median days in the market, median days to offer. How long is it taking for a typical home in your neighborhood to get an offer from a buyer, go under contract? This is the data that you need to know. If you find out that, your house has been on the market since October. It's October, November, December. It says 3 months, right? Yes, I just had to use my fingers. Please don't judge me. 3 months. If you look at the data, you find out that, number one, the median time frame is over 90 days. Then you have research, you have data to say, okay, all right, my anxiety about this, you have rightfully so to be anxious about it. Having your house on the market is no picnic. It is no picnic. It's stressful at best, but at least you know that you're on the right track. What you're experiencing is normal. I would also really lean into your pricing. That's probably going to be my biggest advice for home sellers this year. Is you've got to understand where you are with pricing, because as these markets change, if you're looking at comparable properties from over 30 days, even, that could be too much. That could be wrong information. That could be outdated information. And then pricing it based on that could be a big mistake. Please, guys, please do not price your home. Do not use your neighbors that are on the market as a comp. Now, you can develop a strategy based on what your competition is, but if you're looking at trying to figure out what a buyer would pay for your house, and your neighbor down the street has the same house as you, and you're like, my house is a little bit better, I'm going to charge a little bit more, but their house isn't sold yet. Huge mistake. You need to rely on what has actually closed. And that can be difficult. That can absolutely be difficult. And it's something that you need to monitor constantly. The agent should be monitoring it constantly. And if you're not getting updated data from your agent on a regular basis, and I'm not talking about, here's how many views you had on Zillow this week. That's it. That's not enough. That's not enough. You need to push your agent to give you information. And here's the thing: I had a viewer reach out to me. Actually, I had checked in with her to see how my referral partner was doing and all the things. And she said, I'm stressed. So I'm nervous. I'm nervous that my house isn't going to sell. When I hear that, to me as an agent, I'm hearing, I don't understand. I don't understand. The agent's telling me to lower the price, but I don't understand why. The agent's telling me about lowering the price, but I don't understand. Is that going to be enough? Am I going to have to keep lowering the price constantly? Like as it erodes what I thought I was going to walk away with, for my net proceeds? It's scary when you are relying on a budget and you've got every nickel accounted for. You need to know this stuff. And at the end of the day, sometimes things don't happen out the way you want. Sometimes the information is what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. But the reality of it is, if you put the house on the market because you need to move, well, we don't have control over what buyers are willing to pay. We don't. You have control over what you're willing to sell at, but you don't have any control over how much money you take from them. You can't force them to overpay. And that number is what it is. And a lot of home sellers are going to have to make a hard decision on, because the numbers are not working out the way I thought they were going to, does that mean I just not move this year? Keep in mind that we're probably not going to see huge gains for many, many, many years. So if it's the type of thing you're like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to hunker down for a couple of years, and then we'll see what happens. That's fine, but don't expect, overnight, changes. You might end up having to change what happens next as a result. I've got my fingers crossed for you, Michelle, that you can, that you find a buyer, you find the buyer finds you. Let's see. Let's see. MHOA, why I keep thinking 4:30, not 4. Are you talking about my live stream time? It's always 6 o'clock. It was 6:30 once. I think I changed it to 6:30, but it's always 6 o'clock Eastern time. Thank you very much. Yeah, the studio background, it's still a work in progress, but I've been geeking out on it big time, which I absolutely love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. It was a lot of work. Skate says a balanced market also requires sellers to price their property properly to attract serious buyers. Yes, 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 yes. And Happy New Year to you, Skates. Couldn't agree more. Michelle says the price follow-up is really set to sell under 200,000. No judgment. Yes. So, you know what? It could be just the fact that, it's activity. You lean into the data on the time. What is the days to offer, days on market? That's going to tell you what the buyer activity is for your price range. If the data that the agent has access to is telling you that the days to market or days to offer has changed over the last couple weeks, last month, from 2 months to 3 months, then there's, you start to see patterns and you start to see changes. And it could be that you might be in, maybe in the right ballpark, but two things have either got to happen. Either you've got to hunker down and be patient, or if you really need to get the thing sold, you're really like, I'm done. The only thing you have control over, the only thing, is the price. Yes, you can do updates and you can all the things. I don't recommend making updates that cost you significant money. Never recommend doing that. You don't get the money back on any major updates. If you want to speed up the process, the answer is always the price. I've heard so much, stuff over the years, marketing, strategies and all the things. And as we get into AI, coming into the picture and agents using AI, all that stuff, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. A lot of it is yes, sometimes if you're in an affluent market, that there's certain things that are done that are not done in typical markets. But for the most part, it's, good photography, have the place represented, make sure you disclose, make sure it's clean, presentable, and price it right. And if you've done all those other things, it comes down to price. That is the name of the game. My fingers are crossed for you. Happy New Year, Angie, coming in from the West Coast. And yes, I took some time off over the holidays, as I always do, spend it with my my kiddos and so forth. But this year was all about building out my new studio. As a Kim in Nature says, do condo HOAs have any power for a neighbor that smokes and the smoke comes into my unit through the walls? Wow, I haven't heard that. Through the walls. I mean, I've heard, coming in like via like the deck when you open the back, slider or something like that, or a window. Not through the walls. That's a great question. I think that, from a condo perspective, they look at, and what governs, say, animals having pets and things of that nature. What they're looking at is, what impacts the quiet enjoyment of living there. So, that's the reason why a lot of HOAs will say, no dogs, there's a size limit on the dogs, because the dog barking the owner may not give a care. Like, they don't care about the dog barking, but the neighbor does. And the neighbor has as much right to having quiet enjoyment, not complete quiet, because let's be real, it's a condominium, it's a building, it has, you have neighbors and you have to respect that. But when it comes to smoking, I would bring that up to the condo association, to be honest, because that is not okay. That is not okay. I mean, and I haven't heard of it coming through the walls. That is truly a first, for sure. Michelle, you're very welcome. Angie says, the houses have actually been moving well in my area, above asking. So interesting. I don't remember where I saw. I went through so much data today. San Francisco came up in a report that I was reading today that said that market went from a seller's market to a buyer's market to a more balanced market, and it has shifted back to a seller's market. This is new data. It's shift back to a seller's market. This is how the markets ebb and flow, and this is why you don't rely on national news stations, national broadcast publications, national data for your particular area, because there's an ebb and flow for every location. So if that's happening in San Francisco, Angie, I think you're down in SoCal, Southern California. So, but I wouldn't be surprised at all about that. Oh, here we go. We used to have that smoke issue through the vents and ductwork. That might be the issue, Kim, it might be coming through ductwork. That is awful. Awful, awful, awful. Yes, smell of cooking. Especially if they like to fry a lot of foods. Ugh. Not great. Not great, not great. I want to dig into, let's see. To finish up this article real quick, it says, this Nadia Anvil, oh gosh, I'm having a tough time with names today. Anvil, and you guys can read. We'll just call her Nadia E, a senior economist at NAR. She talks about mortgage rates and how critical they are to affordability. They're not the only thing. to emphasize that. But it says lower rates do unlock buyers. A 1 percentage point drop in mortgage rates can allow up to 5.5. I was actually quite shocked at this number. 5.5 million more households nationwide to qualify for a mortgage. 1% drop is a big deal. It's a big deal. Honestly, I can tell you that is probably one of the reasons why, and I'm going to get into this info in a second, why the number of homes that are sold went up this year. Inventory needs to keep pace. Yes, it does. Cautions that lower rates alone won't create a supercharged market. We need more homes. You can have low rates, but if there's nothing to buy, like I'm hungry and I go in a grocery store and there's nothing to eat. There's nothing to buy. Guess the grocery store's not making any money. Middle income buyers still feeling the squeeze. I think this is where a lot of folks are struggling. It says despite these positive trends, she points out that middle income buyers are still struggling. They currently afford only about 21% of available homes, a far cry from the 50% they could afford before the pandemic. This underscores the need for targeted solutions like building more homes that align with middle income budgets. I think we need to do that as an entirety. We need smaller homes for first-time home buyers as well. We've got to get into the smaller size home. This 3,000 square foot home building. That's not the solution. Now I want to get into comparison, because this all stuff sounds all good, but you could easily say, well, this guy works for the National Association of Realtors. Of course, they're going to try to, skew the data to try to make you feel good about buying a house because they're part of the National Association of Realtors. They want success. They want you to buy houses, all the things. Totally valid. Totally valid if the data wasn't fact-checked. So I did a little bit of that. So I went back and I looked at what the predictions were for 2025. And the National Association of Realtors posted this November 11th of 24. And they talked about what's in the market for 2024. Home sales will rise. Now, this is Lawrence Yun talking about, it says 23, 24, difficult numbers for the year in housing, but pending home sales eked out a 3% year over year gain in September, et cetera, et cetera. His forecast for, now this was a year ago, November, 2025 sales projection, of course, and these projections changed multiple. I've never seen the projections change so many times than they did earlier this year. But 2025, and this is just giving you a point of reference of, okay, we're sitting January of 26. They're predicting for 26. This was November 24, predicting for 25. He says existing home sales to rise 9% year over year. New home sales to jump 11%. Now, let's see if I can get the right article here. So let's see here. Here we go. So this was the where is this? A National Mortgage Professional, and this was an article. This was last week, December 29th, and it was a recap of what happened last year on home sales. According to Homes.com data, annual price growth slowed 2.4%. It was down from much larger gains the prior years, but there was still appreciation. This is also, I'm going to take there was another graphic that I wanted to show you guys on this as well. This is one of those glitches that I was talking about. A self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't think I have it at my fingertips. The thing that I struggled with is that a lot of the end of year data hasn't been released yet. So we're going on October numbers, November numbers. Let's see. Actually, this was Redfin. Redfin also did a recap as well. And they said that 2025's median sale price was 1.7% higher than 24, around $7,400 higher. So It was substantial. Oh, that was home prices. Sorry, guys. I'm all over the place today. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go. This is the right information. I apologize. I'll get my act together eventually by the end of 2025, 2026. Redfin data says an average of 424 homes and 424,000 homes and change were sold every month in 2025. It says when looking at just existing home sales, Redfin expects there to be about 4.24 million. Expecting being, again, the numbers haven't been released. That's on the lowest end of the 4 to 6 million and in line with 23, 24. So, were they in line? It was a little aggressive. Mortgage rates, they predicted, and there was so much talk about mortgage rates this year. Holy cow. According to Freddie Mac, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage ranged from 6.08 to 7.44%. Yoon says the rates should stabilize on the low end of that range for 25 to 26. Well, he got that one right. Here's what actually happened. Let's zoom in on this for you guys. See this a little bit more clearly. Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. We started this year right around 2025, 7.14%. And guess where we landed? Almost a full percentage point lower, right around the low sixes. Exactly where the trajectory, exactly what he said. There was a lot of talk about 5%. There was a lot of talk about less than 5%. These economists, I never heard that come out of their mouths. They never made those predictions. I think that was all hype. It was all, commentary for, by the media to try to, I don't know, hype up the buyers or whatnot, try to bring some kind of, positive news for one reason or another. But it ended up being, he was in line. He was in line with that. Home prices increased slowly after rapid rises. He says he was predicting at the beginning of 25 that the median home price would be up 2%. And that, now I can get back to the data that I had from Redfin. At the end of the Redfin data that they're predicting after they crunch all the numbers through December 31st, 1.7%. 1.7%. Pretty close to being on the money to what the predictions are. For sure. It goes on, they went on to talk about, a different type of buyer emerges and so forth. I'm more concerned about the home sales, the mortgage rates, the home prices, to see how on point, they were to say, okay, well, are they making outlandish expectations? So when they make some of these expectations, some of these predictions heading into 2026, it gives a little bit more clout. What are your thoughts? Tell me what your thoughts are in the chat. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Let's see. Kim says, now that the building frenzy has slowed, do you think build quality will return? That is a fantastic question. And I think that will affect that build quality. They want to ease restrictions, but I think that they have to put more, that would require more policy. That would require more oversight. And, will that happen? I think that's possible. It really depends. It depends on the county. It depends on, the local building codes, or the oversight from the local building departments. I would say if you have enough lawsuits, that might change some things for sure. When I say they don't make them like they used to, I don't know that they'll ever go back. And that largely reflects on the cost factor to the builders and why these mortgage rates are so important, because they have to borrow to build. They need capital, to be able to build these homes. And what will happen with tariffs and the materials, the availability of materials, and the overall cost structure. We will see. We will see. We will see. All I can say is, I hope so. But I think the most important thing is, doesn't mean that you steer clear. You just got to be a super savvy buyer. Super savvy buyer. Do a home inspection. Please, please, please. You're buying a brand new home. Do a home inspection. Do not let your agent tell you, "Oh, it's brand new," and you'll have a 1-year warranty. On Massachusetts, it's a mandatory 1-year warranty. But I don't know depending on what your state requires, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. You got to have an inspection period. You've got to be almost like you got to be a subcontractor. You got to be a micromanager, I guess. Be involved with the new construction process as much as you can. Try to get in there. I know the builders don't like you in there, and I'm not saying you should go in there, but you've got to have a little bit of oversight. But you got to have a home inspection before you buy something new. Period. For sure, because that is a question. I sure do hope so, though. We got Mr. David Matney in the house up in Omaha, Nebraska. The best marketing is the price. Happy New Year's to you. Looks top notch. Hey, thanks, my friend. Appreciate it. And totally agree with you on the pricing, David. 110%. 1863 Sylvia says, I lived in a duplex and the woman above me would dump cooking grease down the sink all the time, clog the pipes, came up oh my gosh. I had a plumber clean out stack even though I was a renter. Oh my God, that's horrendous. People are just, you know what? As my grandmother would say, common sense is not so common. That's awful. Yes. Tilemon? Is that correctly? QQQ, has the building of McMansions ended? I think it is starting to. I think that because of affordability, it is starting to go by the wayside. That's the thing that is the hardest part right now is first-time home buyers. There's not enough housing for first-time home buyers. There's not enough housing for middle income buyers, and those buyers are not buying McMansions. They're not. There's got to be, there's a gap. There's a huge gap. It's not about building, period. It's about building the right houses, in my opinion. I think that it is definitely starting to go by the wayside. The housing, the size of the average new construction home is shrinking. It's shrinking. How far will it go? I don't know. People have a lot of stuff these days. A lot more than they did back in the 1970s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They have, everybody wants and needs more stuff. Apparently, it just is. It just is. But I hope it does change. Something we can definitely watch for sure. Wife Interrupted says everything is fine. The S&P 500 reached all-time highs today. Well, and you know what? Typically that's, watching the stock market and so forth, if you're willing to taking the money out of your stock market is only relevant if you're going to do it today. Like the stock market's going up. I know that I met with my 1-year annual, meeting with my financial advisor. And she's going over all my, my portfolio and all the things. And it's like, okay, great. Yep. Okay. All right. Next. I'm not pulling the money out anytime soon. I'm not retiring anytime soon. So am I on the right track? Yep. Okay. On with life. Stock market doesn't tell the whole story though. Helen says, Jenna, I'd love for home builders to build small or tiny homes. I live in a 1,600 square foot. I'm in my 70s. Would love to move into a tiny house so a young family could live there. You know what? I 100% agree with you. And I think that, that is something to watch. I mean, tiny home communities, tiny homes, or 80, or if you want to classified as an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. A tiny home could be classified that as that if it's being built on an existing property. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the years to come. A lot more. Massachusetts, which historically is a difficult. I know that I hear it all the time with builders, working with builders here. It's so hard. So many restrictions to build in my community in Massachusetts. They just approved. Governor just announced it. They approved accessory dwelling units, and they're going to be treated just like single-family homes, which means you can take mortgages on them and all the things. We're going to see more of that, especially if you have a family member that has maybe a little bit larger lot, or you have a property with acreage that has maybe, your first time home buyer, adult child wants to buy a house and, can't afford to do it by traditional means, but they can do an accessory, an ADU or a tiny home and put it way in the back. And they live their own life, but at a fraction of the cost. I think we're going to see more of that. I really do. Out of necessity. Necessity is breeds invention, right? It's the mother of invention, period. Necessity is the mother of invention. If there's a need, it will eventually happen. It may take time, but it will happen. Materials are still expensive. Yes. And he says, one good thing about California is the building codes are very strict and supervised. I think there's got to be a happy medium, Angie, right? I think there's going to be a happy medium between quality construction and policy, maybe outdated policies that are maybe, or policies that are too strict, energy compliant policies that might be a little bit too strict. Good intentions, but maybe, it may be standing in the way of some very needed progress. EP says the quality of construction also depends on the quality of trade professionals working on these projects. Yes. And given the state of our trade professionals in this country, which I don't, aside from Mike Rowe, I don't hear anybody talking about it. And maybe I'm not in the inner circle, but I don't hear anybody talking. It's not making major news, but it is going to be a serious disruptor in the coming years. There is 30% of the trade persons are going to be retiring in the next 5 years. 30%. That means the plumbers, the electricians, the framers, the roofers, all the things. There's no one behind them, or the numbers they're not being replaced. There's not enough, new trade persons that are going to be taking their place to keep up with the demand, which means demand is going to rise. And we all know that. We know how the story goes, guys. There's demand and there's lack of supply. The price goes up. Supply and demand. That is going to be huge. What it costs you for a plumber, what it costs the builder to bring in a subcontractor, bring in a plumber to do the plumbing work, it's going to go through the roof unless we get more people in the trades, period. And it's not happening. It's not happening fast enough. And I don't know what the answer is there. Maybe incentives. I think it's incentives. Incentivizing helps, but it's going to be, but I couldn't agree with you on that more. Angie says materials may be higher, but competition is also, so prices aren't necessarily going up more. True. And that's the thing. You need more competition. You need more competition. More people in the trades. Poppy, thanks for being here. We are getting ready to sell our 2.5-year-old house in late March or early April 2026. We'll price based on the market, but think we're going to lose money compared to our improvements. It is 2.5 years is not a long time, especially in the market that we're in, and depending on where you're located in, it may not be enough time for that turnaround to negate, if you've made significant, improvements, high cost improvements, I'm talking, bathroom remodels, kitchen remodels, things of that nature, the recapture on those is not is more than 2.5 years. You know what I mean by that is, you spend 50,000 on a kitchen, and how long will it take for you to recoup that 50,000 in terms of your value appreciation? Well, in the current state, of the market that we're in, it's going to take a lot more than 2.5 years. Might be 10, closer to 10 years before you can actually recapture all that money. Yes, someone will pay more for that improvement, but not equivalent to what you spent. So I think at the end of the day, what you'll need to do is decide why you're moving. What's the point? What's the goal? Your reason why, and then financially look at it and say, what's the worst case scenario? I think that is huge. When you're sitting down, you're looking at your price structure, what your house could be worth. An agent sits down with you and says, I've done the comps, and this is the explanation of the comps and so forth. They should be giving you a range. There's got to be because we don't have crystal ball. There's no science to this, because the fact that we're trying to read and we're trying to predict what a buyer's behavior. There's no science. Experiential knowledge will help that. Knowing how to interpret the comps will help with that. But because it's not an exact science, there's got to be a range. There's not a percentage. There's not a number. You take this comp and add this percentage. No, because the market is moving. How can you price it exactly if you've got a moving target? So you should have a range. That range, when you're making your plans on selling, even though you may be starting somewhere in the middle of that range, my strong advice for all home sellers, and this is what I tell my clients, make your goal, make your plan on the low end of the range. We may start in the middle, and it may end up selling for more, but plan on the lower end. Be conservative, because you may end up having to go there. If the market shifts, or the data wasn't interpreted 100% correctly, or we had new data to show that maybe we need to make some adjustments, which happens. It's only as good as what the data that is available, and in the interpretation of that data. But make your plans based on that lower end of the range. And what I mean by that is you take that low end of that market value and then subtract all your expenses, everything, everybody you've got to pay, and all, what's going to the state, what's going to the agent, what's going all this place and the other place, you pay off if you have a mortgage and all that stuff. Go conservative. It'll give you that comfort of knowing that even if you have to go that way, you'll have some room, you'll have some wiggle room. I think that is going to be the name of the game. Bunny Hugger Ronimo. I love that handle. I really do. QQQ. That's a great question. Would it make sense to reach out to the realtor who represented the seller when you originally purchased when looking to sell? My realtor represented mostly buyers. So I always recommend interviewing 3 agents. Always 3 agents. Can you do that? Yes, absolutely. As long as it's not the only agent you talk to. Because then you don't have, if you do only talk to that one agent, you've got nothing to compare that agent to. And the reality of it is, and I tell folks when folks reach out to me for, a connection or a referral to one of my agents, one of my referral partners that I've vetted out and so forth, they may be great agents, but they may not be a good fit for you. So talk to other agents. You may still come back to that agent, but at least you can see all the players in the field. You can, do your due diligence. You got to advocate for yourself, and you got to know, because, they could be just, they could be an okay agent, but then the second agent you talk to is a really good agent. There's no magic sauce. I mean, yeah, they may know the house, but there's nothing there that they can't, there's no information there that can't be ascertained from you or research. I do an incredible amount of research when I'm, researching a home for, a client I'm getting ready to put on the market. I'm looking into not just the MLS data, but I'm looking at, town records and permits and, all the things to try to get as much information as I can. And that isn't information that's held just by the past agent. So you can interview them, but make sure you interview 2 other agents as well, to make sure that you're signing the contract with the right person. Let's see. Yes, good vibes. Gotta love good vibes. MH08 says, I wonder if ADUs could affect the resale value of the property. Maybe people won't want to buy a property with an ADU on it. I think yes and yes. So think of it this way: ADUs and in-law apartments, same kind of animal in the sense that yes, are two different situations. But when you're looking to sell, if you're trying to sell a house with an in-law apartment, not everybody's going to be looking at a house with an in-law. They may buy the house with the in-law, but not use it as an in-law. They use it as a business, maybe they work from home, maybe they convert it to something else. I think that will happen with ADUs. I think that there will be, absolutely, there's going to be more resale value, especially if the ADU is, completely self-sufficient. There's kitchen and there's bathroom and it's connected to some type of sewage and water and electric, all the things. It's basically a mini house, on the property. I mean, I know folks that use that as that's where they work, or they have a studio or whatnot. That could be used not just as an ADU, but as an extension of the house. There will be there's added value, but it just means, like anything else, the more specific, the less vanilla the house is, the smaller the buyer market. I mean, up here in the Northeast, you got a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath colonial or 2.5 bath Cape with a 2-car garage, vanilla. It's going to appeal to the wide audience. You start getting more specific, in-law or first floor master or no first floor master or one full bath, 55 plus communities, it starts to dwindle it down. Just means you have a smaller buyer audience. It may take a little bit more time. Not impossible to sell, not a bad thing. It's just a specific type of property. But that's a great question. Schmitty Magoo says, tell us an actual story about how your client made an offer 20% below asking price, why they did it, and how you handled it. First off, I've never had a buyer make an offer 20% below asking, ever. Like primarily, I shouldn't say never, because there was, when the market crashed and there were a lot of investors, I had a couple, and I don't typically work with investors at this stage in the game, but back in the day, I had a couple investors that made lowball offers, but 20% below is way outside the range of what is normal and reasonable. Normal and reasonable would be 2, 3, 5%. And I say it in a normal market, typical market, the list to sell ratio, what it lists for, what it ultimately ends up selling for, typically is anywhere between 97 and 98%. Just the way it is. Maybe 96%, but say 96, 97%, 98% is what has been typical. And I'm talking over the last 30 years I've been doing this business. That is typical. Now, if you have a situation where the house has been on the market for an extended period of time and there's been no price drops, and I talked to the agent, and here's the thing, if you're looking at making an offer that's well below asking, I can't tell you an actual story, but I can tell you that, to be perfectly honest, Schmitty Magoo, at this stage of the game, I'm going through the big M change. My brain is Swiss cheese half the time. I can't remember. Those clients I've helped over close to 1,000, home buyers, home sellers buy and sell over the last 30 years. And I can't tell you exact circumstance, but I can tell you the summary of circumstances. And typically when a buyer wants to make an offer that is justified, it only is justified after you do the research. So say we see a property and if the average days on the market, days to offer, is 30 days on market, 30 days, 60 days, whatnot. And this house has been on the market for 3 months, 4 months. Now we start digging into that property. When was the last time there was a price reduction? Oh, it's never been a price reduction. Okay, look at the comps. What are the comps saying that the house is actually worth? Okay, talk to the buyer. What's the property worth to them? Okay, I call the listing agent, trying to see if I can dig around, see how much information I can get. Having an agent that is experienced in the local area helps, because I've worked hard to have good relationships with the local agents, so that they know that when I'm bringing them an offer, that I do what I say, and I represent what is true. I'm not going to turn the tables and try to pull punches and all this nonsense. It's not what I do. So, I have some agents will tell me, the seller, and sometimes they tell me too much. Sometimes they tell me too much, like the seller's gotta sell, but they're just being stubborn, and they have not received any offers. Ooh, light bulb. So, my advice to the buyers is this: if you're going to go in lower, even, we do it with the research, and if they say it's like 20, they want to offer 20% below, and it's just new to the market, or does, I don't reject, like, I can't, as an agent, I am bound to comply with lawful instructions, part of the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics. Lawful instruction, meaning, is making a 20% below list price offer, is that lawful? Yes, it is. If I try to educate them and say, listen, this is why this is likely going to, backfire on you, because X, Y, and Z, or if they're being totally unrealistic, to be honest, I may excuse myself and say, you know what, I'm not the agent for you, because you're just kicking tires, and it's just going to waste everybody's time, in doing so. But the big thing is that when we're looking at a particular house, if they come to me and say, Jen, I love this house. I love this house. I don't want to lose this house. This house is everything I've been looking for, and then some. I'll make an offer. I want to make a lowball offer. My question to them is, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, if you make a lowball offer, you risk the seller being insulted. The seller does not have to sell to you. They don't. There's nothing saying that if you bring them full price, they have to sell. That's a seller's choice. If the seller's like, listen, I don't trust you as a buyer because you came to me and made a huge low offer, and now you're coming back with a second offer, how do I know you're not playing games and you're not going to just beat me up when we go to the home inspection? They can do that. I've seen it. So you risk that. You risk the seller saying, beat it. You risk, which ends negotiations entirely. You don't get a second chance. A second chance is not guaranteed. Say, oh, I'm going to offer 20%, but if they didn't say no, I'll go up to 10%. Like, you may not get that opportunity. There's nothing saying that you're entitled to that opportunity. What I ask the buyers is, if the seller does that, will you be disappointed? If the answer is no, make the offer and see what happens. I know what the outcome is, but sometimes people, people need to go through that process themselves. But if they say, I would be devastated, then I start from ground zero, and we go through comps and research and all the things. And I tell you, this is what could happen. Not guaranteed, but what could happen. Is it worth the gamble to you? Is it worth the gamble? This is just the facts, the state of affairs. Yes, it's a business transaction, but this is a seller's home. It's a seller's home. We can't forget that. Yes, if your mindset of like, well, it is what it is, just numbers, it's just a contract, just an offer, whatever, that's for you. But the seller who's been in their house for 30 years, who raised their children and had done repairs and fix-ups and all the things, and they take pride in their, and now you're coming in and you're telling them it's not worth nearly what they're asking, even though they feel like that's all the numbers and they've done all their research. That's like putting a stake through their heart. They are going to be emotional. It is what it is. So I think that's how I would advise. And, if at the end of the day, if a buyer wants to offer what is unrealistically lower, like 20% would be, then I would have them just make sure, take a good hard look. Is this the path that you want to go on? I will not tell them what they should or shouldn't do, but I'm going to say, is this the path that you want to go on? And then they give me their answer. I hope that helps. And I'm not afraid to excuse myself. if I have a buyer that is being completely unrealistic and just, not listening to data and facts, and what the market represents, and is convinced that a market is worse than it actually is, um, I will just, I will say, you know what, there are a lot of real estate agents in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Let me introduce you to somebody. I would say at that point, we say, see ya. Angie says, my husband has been in the trades forever, as we say up here in the Northeast, forever. And most of the good ones either retired or getting ready to. He's always complaining about the new guys. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about, Angie. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's, you know what, as a DIYer who also, like, I won't do something unless I can do it 100% correctly. And I'm not licensed and all this stuff, but it's my house. You know, I will try to do something for that because I don't necessarily trust a lot of the tradespeople in my area, to be honest. It's a tough thing right now. If I need a plumber, I'll just call Jen. Please don't. I'm still in physical therapy for my shoulder from when I replumbed my basement. I think I screwed up my the muscle tendon there. What did she call it? The ligament infringement, I think is what I think that's what it's called. I don't know. It's just a thing. It's just a thing. But I'm actually trying my hand at woodworking at the moment. I installed this. That was pretty good. Turned my circular saw into a table saw, which was some guides. I made some guides. That was a lot of fun. I like learning stuff and learning new stuff. Bubble India says, we already know all HVAC businesses are being quietly bought out by private equity, keeping it looking independently owned, even though it's not. Interesting. I have not heard that. That's not, it's not happening here. That's interesting. I have not heard that. Poppy says, our house was newly built in 23. But we spent money on landscaping, new fences. We're moving to France to be close to in-laws. We already bought newly remodeled house there. So you have a strong reason why to sell. Strong reason why. He's going to be super, prepare, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right? As the old saying goes. Angie asks, QQQ, do you recommend telling your realtor the absolute lowest you're willing to go or hold off on that to not make it a quicker sale for them? I typically say, you know what, hold that close to your vest. And there's a couple reasons why. I mean, I don't ask that question on my home sellers unless it comes up in conversation when we're doing at the beginning of the process and we go through the net proceeds sheet on what I think the valuation is. And if it starts to get close to where their expectation for selling is, they will say, listen, I see the range, but this makes me nervous because this is close to really where my cutoff point is. And so then we have a conversation about why they want to do it and, and so on and so forth. But I think the reason why that you hold off is, number one, I do agree with the fact that there are a lot, well, 80%, at least 80% of the agents that, and out of that 80%, I think a lot of agents will 100% use that information in their best interest to try to get the deal done. There is the potential for, if you tell them, look, I'm listed here, but I'm willing to sell it for here. And maybe it's been on the market for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And another buyer's agent calls them and just starts asking them questions about the property and, where's the seller going and why they're selling, which is totally normal. That agent, to move the deal along, might say, listen, I know the seller will take this. I've had agents call me and say, before they've even made an offer, this is not as of recent. This was before, when it went back when the market was recovering from the great financial crisis, and even years prior to the pandemic. And I've had agents call and say, "Well, my buyer's willing to come up to this. Would your seller come down that low?" And my response is, make an offer, find out. Like, I'm not going to speak for the seller, because at the end of the day, oftentimes it comes down to negotiations. If you have a really good qualified buyer, a home seller might make the decision to come down a little bit lower than they anticipated, because maybe the buyer's putting 50% down on their mortgage, and they're not going to need, because of such a large down payment, the bank is not requiring an appraisal or whatever. They're quick closing, which is good for the seller. Like, there's so many different parts to the pricing that, and reasons why a seller might accept a little bit lower. So to say that, to tell that, to get that information to the listing agent up front, I think is a mistake. I think that you have a general conversation at the beginning when you're doing your net proceeds is one thing, but no, I typically recommend hold off when you get to negotiations, and and you're going back and forth and all the things. It will eventually get to a point where you're going to need to make a decision and tell the agent where you're at, to see if we can get, you can come to terms with the buyer, but not before. I do not. I know a lot of agents don't like me saying that kind of stuff, but you know what? Too bad for them. That's all I'm saying. I'm not here to make friends on this channel. I'm here to help you guys advocate for yourself. Period. End of story. End of story. That is the beauty. Ladies, if you have been through menopause, if you're going through menopause, this is one of the beautiful things. It's just, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to do, and what the heck with it? Because this follows my moral compass, But I digress. Angie says, where do you recommend looking up the best realtors in your area? Different sites always give me different agents. Yeah, that's a tough one. So, I mean, you could start with, obviously, I have my free to use service. I do refer you to an agent, one of my pre-vetted, referral partners, of which my criteria for referral agents are maybe unrealistic, but it's pretty darn high. And actually right now I'm going through my review process to kind of check in on all the referral partners, because for sure some of them are being taken off the list because they're just not, living up to, because it's not just, here's the thing, it's not just about sales volume. It's not just about transactions, number of transactions. I have talked to some pretty proficient agents that are top sales people in their area. They've sold a lot of sold a lot of property, that are not 20% agents. Why? Because they lack the critical piece. To me, the 20% agent is, being empathetic and looking out for the client's best interest above all. Period. We are here to advocate for you. You, in the meantime, have to advocate for yourself. But as a good agent, a 20% agent would do that. How do you find those on an online? You can't, unless you just start interviewing and talking. So, I think that, getting referrals, I've done my business by referral my entire career. And I think that getting a referral is a good start. But, Angie, if you go on the websites, you go on to, here's the other thing. You can go on their credentials, look at their credentials, look at their social media sites. One of the things I do, look at their Facebook page, look at their Instagram page. Why? Because you want to see what type of person they are. You want to see how they show up on their community. You want to see, is everything that they post online, touting how great they are? And look, I just sold another thing and I'm ranked number 5. I'm ranked number 1. I'm blah, 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 me. Me. If that's all you see as a social presence, red flag. My opinion, red flag. You want somebody who's not self-serving. It is It's hard. I wish I had a magic. And for those that have reached out, if I've taken longer to find because I don't have a big team doing, I handle it myself. I choose to do it that way because I want to be the one that has the last say on whether this person is going to represent me as a referral to you. So I go through it pretty darn thoroughly because I want to make sure that, well, when the rubber meets the road, that these people are going to live up to what I'm promising. Hope that helps you. Dun, 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 dun. Yes, Kate says in-ground swimming pools can be a detraction to some buyers too. Absolutely, along with ADUs and in-law apartments. Let's see. I'm gonna get to the poll in a second. Make sure you guys chime in on that poll. Let's see how many people we got going on here. Oh, let's see. We got about almost 100 votes. So if you haven't voted on the poll, do that now. I'm gonna get those poll results in a hot second. I'm gonna keep going on this chat. Let's see. I've had MHOA says I have a 2-story structure that could be converted to an ADU. It just doesn't pencil out. Interesting. Let's see. Poppy says, where we live in the Chapel Hill, North Carolina area, detached ADUs with a parking spot are highly popular and can generate income. Rent can be used for multi-generational living, Airbnb income. Yes, and yes. And I think that's the thing is we're going to see zoning changes like what happened in Massachusetts. We're going to see that started to happen across the country. And if I'm correct in this. I have to double check this 100%, but I believe Massachusetts was the first in the country as a state to approve, that at high level for ADU improvement, ADU classifications and additions. So I think that's going to spread. I really do, in a good way. Let's see. Hello from NYC. Good old NYC. I love going to Broadway there. It's a quick train ride from Boston to NYC these days. M. Lynn, QQQ. I have an apartment above the garage, bathroom, kitchen, open area, 600 square feet. Can it be sold as square footage like my house? I would say, so when you're looking at the value of a home and you're looking at, what something could be added, what adds value, you're going to look at that item as you have to ask the question, what is the highest and best, this is like classic real estate 101 stuff. What is the highest and best use of said item? So you have a piece of land, a piece of raw land. What's the highest and best use of that raw land? Well, if that raw land is subdividable, if it is, buildable, well, that highest and best use is going to be far more than if that raw land was conservation land. It was wet. It was protected, so on and so forth. Less desirable. What's the highest and best use? If the highest and best use of that apartment or the garage, is additional square footage for an in-law, and there's a high demand in your area for in-laws, or high demand for apartments, yes, and check with, as far as your direct question about sold as square footage for your house, you want to check what your local zoning laws entail. So, typically what they'll tell you is square footage has to be, you have to have proper egress. You've got to have, above grade, which obviously you have all of this, if it's a legal apartment, which would be the other question I would have, has everything been signed off by the zoning department and so forth, and so legally you're able to do that in your area. Then, I would say yes, but yeah, check with the local zoning, and building codes. So, you can make an anonymous call to said departments, not tell them who you are, or where you live, and just be like, by the way, I live, if I have a garage, if I have an apartment over the garage, is that legal in, whatever part of town you live or whatever. Let's see. Shmini says, thanks for the answer. I should have just said well below asking instead of 20%. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I think that my commentary on it's the same. Angie says, Jen, come over. I do work all the time. I would love that. I said, you're a little far away from me. My next project is I'm going to build a cabinet for my garage. I'm going to organize my garage. No other reason than I just want to do it. I just want to test my my skill level. It's just so satisfying. Of course, I made the big mistake, Angie. I have heat in my basement, and it has been flipping cold here. I mean, like unusually cold. There's no heat in my garage, so I made the huge mistake. I was cutting down some some shelves, and even though my circular saw has a dust bag on it and all the things, I should have hooked it up to my shop vac, because man, sawdust everywhere. I'm like, oh, I won't do that again. I'll brave the cold. I'm not doing it in the basement because, oh my gosh, there's sawdust all over the washer dryer, all over. I'm with my little Swiffer cleaning all my racks with all my boxes. Oh, what a mess. Live and you learn. It's all fun. It's very satisfying to build stuff. Let's see. Kimberly says, I'm delisted my house in October. 80% agent, took your advice, interviewed 3 agents. One talked like a real estate was a hobby. Ooh, big red flag. 2 bragged about being the best negotiator. And 3, house was originally priced too high. Oh man, all excuses. This is the state of affairs. This is the state of affairs. My advice is that if you talk to 3 people and they all do not pass the sniff test, I guess you call it, lack of a better term, interview more. Interviewing agents is not a fun thing. It is not something that you're like, oh, yay, I get to go interview a real estate agent. Yay. It's like going to a car dealership for most people. It's like, yay, I get to buy a new car. I hate buying new cars. It's like, I know I'm going to go in, I'm going to ask one question, and the guy's going to disappear for 20 minutes. I'm like, I just want to ask this one question, just one question. And it's a siege. It's like having a root canal. But if you really want to, the time spent will be worthwhile. If the time spent of interviewing, and just keep on interviewing until you find someone. Sometimes you may have to adjust your expectations, but I don't think that's usually the case. I think there's just so many real estate agents out there that it's hard to pick through the rubble, pick through the pile. But don't skip that process. Never. Ooh, good question. Lynn says, what season is typically the best time to sell? The best season to sell? First off, my first answer is when it's the best time for you to sell. Plain and simple. Because the fact of the matter is, there's no simple answer. There's positives and negatives. There's pros and cons to every season. Every season, there's pros and cons. I always recommend you got to time it based on your own circumstances. But the most popular, I'm not going to say it's the best, the most popular time to sell is the spring. Coming out of winter, that's typically in a lot of places where landscaping looks the best. There's typically, after the Super Bowl is when the market starts to ramp up, and that's when the most number of buyers come out of the woodwork. So sellers get to enjoy more traffic. There's also more competition, which is one of the cons. If you have more competition, that means you are probably going to end up having to price it a little bit more aggressively to get the attention of the buyers because you're competing against other listings. So, there's pros and cons to every season. I would also say that it also depends on where you live, because, you live up in the Northeast. Winter's probably not going to be on, first choice because of weather and snow and liability and ice and all the things. But if you live in Arizona, who cares? Louisiana, California, Southern California, Central California, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as much, but I hope that helps. I'm not trying to sidestep the situation, but I think the reality of it is I think this industry has put everything into like a box. Like, this is what you should do and this is what you follow, and it's not that easy. It's not that easy. Everybody's situation is going to be different. Different. Angie says, I think she was, that's what I was thinking of doing. I'll tell her it's 10K over what it would be. Right on, right on. Right on, right on. Yes, Michelle says the I Do Not Care Club. LOL. Oh, menopause. I think that's why I tell my very, 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 very close friend Jackie Baker. I'm like, I think that's why I waited so long to have a YouTube channel, because I just get on here and you know what? I am the same person. If we hung out, I'd be the same person. It's like I'm just speaking my truth. And I love that I just do that. It's like, well, you don't agree with me, that's okay. There's room for everybody here. Kara says, oh, I love all this. I'm one hot flash away from walking from this negotiation. Amen, sister. Yes, yes, and yes. Oh yeah, the Do Not Care Club. You're talking about I know who you're talking about. That content creator. Love it, love it, love it. Oh goodness. Here we go. Poppy says California passed a law a few years ago allowing ADUs statewide. Okay, and removing lots of restrictions localities had. For instance, the state removed an off-street parking spot requirement. There you go. Thanks for sharing that. Oh yeah, I agree with you. The woodworking, I think it's because honestly, my dad, who is a retired engineer, used to do a lot of woodworking, and it's just that smell. Maybe it's bringing me back to younger days. That smell of freshly cut wood. It is, yeah. It's kind of, I do love it. That and fresh cut grass. Tracy says you should have a second channel. For all you know, you know what? My friend Jackie mentioned that. Here's the reason why I'll probably never do it is, number one, I am by no means an expert to be teaching people how to do stuff, because it's a learning process. I cut these and put them up, and all the things, and then realized that I didn't leave space underneath to run wires for like this floating. You probably can't tell. This is one of those floating light bulbs, like the light bulbs, like there's a gap, like it's science, magnets. But there's a wire running down, and I want to run it underneath, but I had it flat to the baseboard. Oh, so take them all down. Take an eighth of it, take a quarter inch off, put them back. Like, I make so many mistakes, and just like, you fix it. So I don't want to be responsible for somebody accidentally like really ruining something. But the thought has occurred to me. I love all this conversation. SMVP So I know this sounds strange. I plan to take up woodworking when I get my new house. Want to get good enough to make a credenza for the new house. It sounds really fun. Do it. The one thing that I have learned in my years, especially the last several years, especially coming out of the pandemic, it's like no time like the present. Like, what's the reason why you don't, like, just go for it? Go for it. It's so satisfying. And there's nothing, Angie, I'm sure you would agree with this. There's nothing more empowering as a woman. There's nothing more empowering to take a step back and be, I did that. I did that plumbing. I did that electrical. Just like this wire was not long enough. So what did I do? I took an old adapter from an old router that I don't use anymore and snipped it off and took out all my stuff and, my heat gun, and put some heat shrink and spliced in, another 2-3 feet of wire to go between the adapter so that I could run. I did. I'm like, yeah, I did that. Nobody will ever see it or know about it. Well, you guys now know, but it's very empowering. Go for it. All right. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. But he says, I know. So you can't have these real chats with your realtor. I'm not quite. Remind me what you're referring to that. To referring on that, Bunny. Mm, 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 mm. Let's see. Yes, the poll. Okay. The poll, we got 117 votes, and we're going to close this poll. Do you think the 2025 housing market ended up being better or worse than you expected? There was so many crash videos, crash, and foreclosures are coming, and prices are going to fall 50%. All this nonsense. 43% of you said worse. 15% said better, and 43% said as expected. Very interesting. Very interesting. So that tells me that, you were, as expected could be that you were, anticipating what happened, not that it was going to be as terrible as sometimes the negative Nellies out there would talk about. But that it was worse means that you're optimistic, which, to be honest, I appreciate that. Optimism is a good thing. We'll see what happens heading into 2026, though, with what's happening with these predictions. I think the predictions are pretty subtle and pretty conservative, with what they're talking about with pricing, with mortgage rates, with the inventory. I think it's going to be, very slow and steady. It's going to improve slowly for buyers. The name of the game this year for home sellers is managing your expectations. That's going to be the biggest, most challenging thing for home sellers this year. Managing your expectations, making sure you have the right data, making sure that you are not overreacting and nervous because you read an article that things are not selling and you've been on your market for 90 days and, oh my God, am I part of that group? But take a step back, research, push your agent to give you data, do data on your own, research, and then ask your agent, advocate for yourself and all the things. But, knowing that and trying to, the best you can, take some of that knee-jerk reaction, that fight or flight emotional element out of the equation so that you can, react logically to a stressful situation. That's going to be the key to making it through the next year, in my opinion. I'm going to take a quick Tom DeCarlo, really appreciated your listing agent referral moving forward quickly. The hardest part is selling, decluttering. Yes. Well, you're very welcome. I'm super happy for you, and good luck. You know what? Put your head down, and one box at a time, one room at a time, one shelf at a time. There's a book on how do you eat an elephant? It's an old one, and the answer is one bite at a time. Not that you want to eat an elephant, but you get the gist. Oh yes, I agree, Angie, about making furniture. Yes, Kara says I said worse because I was buying and selling and both took longer than expected. That's going to be the managing expectations thing that I'm talking about for this year. For sure. Oh my goodness. Michelle says, patience is not a virtue I hold in high regard. Oh gosh. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. You know what? Buying, selling, it is an emotional process, regardless of how many times you've done this, regardless of how many times you've moved. There is an element, it is natural. And knowing it, acknowledging it so that you can try, you're not going to be able to take it out entirely. That's why I truly in my, I truly believe at my core that working with a good agent, not a bad agent, better off doing it by yourself. If you're working with a bad agent, you can align yourself with a good agent. That's what a good agent does. A good agent helps you navigate it and we'll clue you in on the logical side and the data side so that you can kind of come back in from the abyss. Oh my goodness. All is good stuff. Guys, I'm gonna check out here. Let's grab some dinner. It's about 7:45 on Eastern time. But guys, this wraps up the first show of 2026. I will see you guys back here next Tuesday, normal time, and 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll get the show rolling. And I've got this new studio built and all the things. I'm working on some new regular content that I'm excited to roll out in the very, very near future. So stay tuned for that. But the live streams will be coming every Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. MHOA at 6 p.m. Eastern. Just to let you know. Guys, have a great start to the new year. Be safe. Stay warm if you're in one of these ridiculously cold climates and all the things. And thank you for spending time with me. There's a lot of people, a lot of agents, a lot of YouTubers out there doing housing market stuff and all the things. And you chose to spend some time with me tonight, and I appreciate you very much. Guys, have a great rest of the week. We'll see you next week. Ciao.